After a weekend-long family gathering, I returned to my small apartment in Seattle, completely exhausted. Everything seemed normal, at least until I opened my banking app to transfer money for the electric bill. My eyes went blurry at the number on the screen, $83.52. I checked it 3 times, then again, certain it wasn't a glitch or my tired eyes playing tricks. Just 2 days ago, I had over $9,000 in that account. I felt the blood drain from my body. My heart pounded like someone was knocking from inside my chest. With shaking hands, I immediately called the bank. After a few security questions, the rep said, "The transactions were made from a device previously logged in, same IP address as a personal computer." I stood up, grabbed my keys, and drove straight back to my mom's house, the same place that just hosted our biggest family gathering of the year. I still couldn't shake the images of everyone hugging and laughing from my mind. And yet, just hours later, I stood there again, in the old kitchen I grew up in, reaching for a glass of water from the cupboard, my heart still reeling from shock. "You're back already?" My sister Amanda's voice floated in from the living room, casual and carefree like nothing had happened. She sat on the couch with her legs crossed, holding a glass of red wine, not the slightest hint of concern on her face. "I just checked my account." I tried to keep my voice steady, but the tightness in my throat betrayed me. Nathan, my brother-in-law, walked out from the kitchen holding a soda can. He leaned against the fridge, looking half amused, half dismissive. "Oh, that?" Nathan smirked. "We needed that money more than you did, Alyssa." It hit me like a slap across the face. I froze, stunned, unable to form a single word. Amanda chuckled softly, shrugging like I was overreacting. "Don't be so dramatic," she said. "You've got a good job, no debt, no kids. You live alone." I turned to my mom. She was sitting in the corner knitting, her expression as calm as ever. "Mom, did you know about this?" She sighed, not looking up. Her voice was gentle, like I'd just complained about the soup being too salty. "You're always so sensitive. You have more. What's wrong with helping a little?" I turned to my dad, who was glued to his phone. He mumbled without looking up. "Don't use harsh words. It's family business." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But how did you even get into my banking info?" Amanda shrugged. "I used Mom's computer and saw your account was still logged in. If you didn't log out..." She said it like I was the one at fault, like what they did was perfectly justified. My hands clenched, nails digging into my palms. My heart was racing. Nathan shrugged like this was all no big deal. "It's not like we bought luxury stuff, rent, groceries, just to survive. Otherwise, we'd be starving." I looked at them. All of them. Not one apology, not one guilty look, not even a proper explanation. "What did I do to deserve this?" I whispered, though no one seemed to care. Amanda tossed her hair back and mumbled, "You can earn it back. Don't be so dramatic." I slowly picked up my purse. No one stopped me. No one asked if I was okay. My mom only said, out of habit, "Don't forget Sunday dinner." I walked to the door, heart pounding, empty inside. But before I left, I paused at the doorway, hand on the knob, then looked back. "If you think I'm just gonna let this go, wait and see what happens next?" Amanda giggled. "Oh, please, you're being so theatrical. Honestly, Alyssa, we needed that money more than you. Don't be selfish." I didn't respond. Outside, it had started to rain, and inside me, another storm was quietly building. I drove through the rain, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The traffic light ahead was red, but my mind was spinning with every cold word I'd just heard. "We needed that money more than you." No remorse, no apology. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I didn't want to go home yet. I needed air, so I pulled into the parking lot near Green Lake Park, where I usually jog on Saturday mornings. I turned off the engine, sat in silence, and reopened the banking app. That number was still there, just as shameless and cold as Amanda's face. I couldn't say I was completely surprised. I had just hoped. When I was 27, I got hired as a marketing manager at a major pharmaceutical company. While I was still adjusting to the job and new life, Amanda called. "Hey, my phone got cut off. Can you spot me some cash?" I didn't think twice. They were family, right? Then came Nathan, unemployed for nearly 6 months. "Just need a few hundred to get by until I find something," he said. I stayed quiet. One year, for Haley's birthday, Amanda sent me a suggested gift list. The cheapest item was over $200. I wanted to say no, but then my mom called, her voice sweet. "You're not getting anything for your niece. She's so excited. You're better off than the rest of us." And just like that, I became the first person they called for money troubles. Amanda got a new car. I chipped in on the down payment. Nathan lost his wallet. I wired money that night. Mom's electric bill overdue. I dipped into savings. Every time, all they had to say was, "You're the most stable one in the family." They never once asked, "Are you doing okay?" Never stopped to think. I had days where I counted every dollar, skipped vacations, or put off buying things for myself. A few months ago, I turned down a vacation with my best friend because I used that money to help Nathan with rent. Amanda, they said it like a compliment, but now I realize it wasn't gratitude. It was an unspoken declaration, "It's your job." The rain kept falling. I turned on the radio, hoping the noise would calm the ache in my chest. But nothing could soothe the feeling of being seen as a tool. Not a daughter, not a sister, just a credit card with a heartbeat. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Amanda said you're upset about the money. Don't make a big deal, sweetheart. We're family." Family. Why did that word feel so heavy now? I used to think if I just stayed patient, generous enough, they would realize. Maybe say thank you, or at least ask how I was. But they never did. Because in their eyes, I didn't need help. And the one who doesn't need help is expected to help everyone else. I took a deep breath and opened my notes app. Every payment I ever made, every late-night call, every time I denied myself for them, I started writing it all down. Not to ask for it back, but so I'd never forget. Never let myself be put in that position again. The rain began to ease. Pale sunlight peeked through the gray clouds. I sat up straight, hands on the wheel. This time, I wasn't looking back. That night, I returned to my apartment, still reeling from Nathan's words echoing in my mind. "We needed that money more than you." No apology, no explanation. Just pure, unbelievable entitlement. But what truly kept me up wasn't the lost money. It was the family's complete indifference in the face of it. I couldn't let it go, and I didn't plan to. The next morning, I called the bank and requested a full transaction report from the past 10 days. The file was 17 pages long. I printed it out and marked every suspicious charge in red. One anonymous transaction caught my eye. Almost $2,800 from an IP address. That matched my mom's house. Yes, I'd used a computer there before, but never logged into my bank account and just left it open. I had only checked email and my calendar. Someone in that house had accessed it, remembered my info, and waited for the right moment. That weekend, I returned to Mom's house like it was a casual visit. The roast smelled the same as always, but the air was thick with tension. Amanda sat at the head of the table, avoiding my eyes. Nathan was overly relaxed, pouring lemonade like there wasn't a fire burning under the surface. I didn't waste time. "I reviewed all my transactions," I said, placing the paperwork on the table. "My account was accessed from Mom's computer. I was here that day, yes, but I didn't log into my bank. So, who took the info?" No one answered. My mom kept her head down, picking at her salad like I'd just asked about the weather. Dad sat in silence behind his open newspaper. Only Amanda spoke, her voice small but laced with sarcasm. "You left it logged in. It's not like we hacked into anything." I looked straight at her. "So you admit it?" Amanda shrugged. I just saw it open. You didn't lock it, and it's not like it's the first time you helped. I didn't agree to this time. Nathan set his glass down with a soft clink. You're always so dramatic. This isn't stealing, it's helping each other. It's family. No, I said firmly. Helping is when someone asks and the other agrees. This was taking, without asking. My mom finally looked up, her voice gentle like she was explaining something to a stubborn child. Elisa, you live alone, have a good job, no burdens. Amanda's raising a child, Nathan's still figuring things out. Family is about sharing. And sharing means quietly draining my entire savings? My voice began to tremble, not from anger, but from pain. My dad folded his newspaper and looked up, visibly annoyed. Don't be so harsh. You've always been the strongest one in this family. You know no one else could handle it, so everyone trusted you. Trusted me? I let out a dry laugh. Stealing personal information and emptying my account? That's what you call trust? Why not just call it what it is, taking advantage? Amanda slammed her hand on the table, the first time she lost her cool. We didn't splurge on anything. It was for rent, medication for Haley, car repairs. I'm exhausted. You're exhausted? What about me? I looked at each person in that room, the people I once called family. I was exhausted too. When I worked 60 hours a week to pay off your debt, when I canceled my vacation just to keep Nathan from getting evicted, when I ate instant noodles for 3 weeks to help Mom pay the utility bill, I'd been tired for a long time. But I never complained, because I thought I was doing the right thing, but clearly all I did was enable everyone's selfishness. No one said a word. Only the ticking of the kitchen clock filled the silence. I stood up, grabbed the folder and my purse. Before leaving the room, I paused and looked at Mom. If this is how you treat the only person who never asked for a single cent, don't be surprised when I start taking back what I deserve. Nathan let out a mocking laugh. What are you gonna do, Alyssa? Call the cops? I looked him straight in the eye, my gaze steady. Just wait and see. Then, I walked out of the house I once called home. For the first time, without a trace of regret. Only a rising sense of resolve in my chest. I got home just as dusk settled over Seattle. The air felt thicker than usual, heavy with the fury still brewing inside me. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled out a file folder. I had kept receipts, messages, transfers, email confirmations, even screenshots from years ago. Not because I was paranoid, but because I knew, someday, my quiet sacrifices would need proof. I began organizing everything. From the very first payment, $92.50 for Amanda's phone bill 3 years ago, to the biggest one, $3,200 wired to Nathan for an urgent issue. I had full bank statements, email confirmations. Over 3 nights, I built a spreadsheet, categorizing each expense. I color-coded everything. Green for medical, yellow for living expenses, red for the ones with no justification. Like the $1,350 Nathan spent on a gaming console last Black Friday. I remembered it clearly because I had to skip a winter trip with coworkers just to make my insurance payment. On Monday morning, I went to the Financial Crimes Division downtown, bringing all the printed documents, a USB with the spreadsheet, and a completed complaint form. A young officer named Harper took my case. She flipped through each page, nodding as she read. We'll begin a preliminary investigation under financial fraud and unauthorized access to personal information. Do you have names of the individuals involved? I do, I said, handing her the list. Amanda Walker, Nathan Walker, Donna Grant, my mother, Paul Grant, my father. I left the precinct under gray skies, but with a flicker of light inside me. Not because I wanted them punished, but because I finally stopped staying silent. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday afternoon, I was in a Zoom meeting when an unknown number called. I muted the call and stepped onto my balcony to answer. It was Harper. Ms. Alyssa, we've completed the preliminary investigation. We have sufficient grounds to move forward. The investigative unit will visit the individual's residences today. I froze. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, more like relief. After all these years, someone finally saw what I had endured. That night, while I was preparing dinner, my phone rang non-stop. First Mom, then Amanda, then Nathan. I didn't pick up. The texts started pouring in after, "Call your mother now." "What are you doing, Alyssa? Did you really call the police?" I didn't respond to any of them. An hour later, I got a text from an old neighbor. "There are 3 people in jackets labeled Financial Crimes Unit outside Donna's house. They asked about you too." The next day, I arrived at work early. As I stepped into the elevator, I caught a few curious stares from coworkers. Then my manager approached me. "We received a call from a local reporter asking to verify a financial investigation linked to your name," he said, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "We didn't confirm anything, but if you need time, just say the word." I smiled softly. "It's okay. I'm doing the right thing." That evening, I sat by my window, watching the lights glow from the surrounding apartments. Amanda's words still echoed in my head. "I swear, this family only survives because of you." Yes, they survived. Because of me. But they never saw me as a person, just a wallet, a tool. And now, that tool had said enough. I opened my journal and wrote one line. "I am not the family bank. I am Alyssa." For the first time, I saw my name on a page not tied to a bill or a money transfer, just my name, a person, and freedom, finally within reach. The first message came that Monday morning as I was getting ready for work. My phone screen lit up with a familiar line. "Call me, Mom." I didn't open it. An hour later, as I poured coffee, her voicemail came through. "Alyssa, this is going too far. I know there's been misunderstandings, but you don't have to take it this far. Can you please call me back?" I set the mug down, a chill running through me. Her voice was the same, soft, gentle, as if By noon, Amanda sent a long text. "My bank account is frozen. I can't pay Haley's tuition. I don't know what to do. You win, okay? Are you happy now?" That last sentence made my skin crawl, as if this was a game I started, as if they were just unwilling players dragged into it. But I knew the truth. I wasn't trying to win. I was just done enduring. The next day, Harper called with an update. "Alyssa, we've confirmed the amount withdrawn and misused. Amanda is now under investigation for unauthorized transfers. Nathan is implicated in withdrawing funds from an unapproved device. And your parents used part of the money for illegal mortgage payments, which could be subject to recovery." Oh, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me hurt, not because of the consequences they now faced, but because they still didn't understand how it ever came to this. That night, Nathan called repeatedly. I blocked his number. Less than 10 minutes later, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. "Alyssa, please. I've been suspended from work. They're investigating my accounts. I can't lose everything over one mistake. Can't you say something to help me?" The arrogance, the mockery, the laughter from before, gone, replaced by thinly veiled panic. But I didn't flinch. Thursday morning, I got a message from my dad. He rarely reached out, so even one line made me pause. "The bank sent a foreclosure warning. If we don't pay in 30 days, we lose the house." I read it over and over. No apology, no admission, just a cold statement and a faint hope that, like always, I would step in to fix it. I didn't reply, but that night, standing by my window watching the streetlights spill across the glass, I thought of all the times I skipped lunch to wire Mom money on time. The dates I canceled because Amanda called me in tears. I'd given not just my money, but my peace. This time, I wasn't going back. That weekend, I drove toward the Edmonds shoreline, a place where Dad and I used to go fishing every summer when I was little. No one knew where I was, no one asked how I was doing. The same people who called me their lifeline now only reached out to salvage the damage they caused. Mid-afternoon, my phone lit up again. A message from Mom. "Alyssa, I'm begging you. I know I was wrong, but if we lose the house, I don't know how I'll survive. Please, don't abandon me." I stared at the screen for a long time. That message made my chest tighten. But not from guilt. From the realization that even now, she was thinking about the house, not me. No one asked if I was okay. I set my phone down and stepped onto the sand, letting the ocean breeze blow away the heaviness in my chest. I knew I had entered the hardest part. The part where they'd call me cruel, ungrateful, even destructive. But also the part where I was no longer expected to carry what was never mine to hold. I looked out at the vast water. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about bills, money requests, or late-night calls. I was thinking about me, and the peace I was finally starting to feel, piece by piece. 3 weeks later, I filed for an extended leave of absence. Without telling anyone, I packed everything neatly into a rented car and left Seattle on a gloomy Wednesday morning, driving across the state like I was shedding the old skin of a woman smothered by unreasonable expectations. I arrived in Boulder, Colorado, a small town I had passed through years ago on a work trip. Back then, I only had a few hours to wander around the downtown area, sip coffee in a cozy cafe with soft jazz and warm yellow lights, but the calm I felt that day stuck with me. Now, it became the place I chose to begin again. I rented a small studio apartment overlooking the mountains. White walls, big windows catching the morning light. Within days, I bought a new desk, filled vases with fresh flowers, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to clear space for someone else's needs. I changed my number, told my company I'd be working remotely for an indefinite period, and strangely enough, once I stopped being drained by my family, my energy returned. I slept better, ate regularly, and when I sat at my desk, my mind felt clearer than ever. Just 2 weeks after settling in Boulder, my boss, Julian, called. "Alyssa, I just reviewed your new strategy plan. It's brilliant. Have you considered taking over as regional coordinator for the entire West Coast?" I paused for a moment. A year ago, if I had heard those words, I probably would have said no, because I still had to worry about Mom, about Amanda, about Nathan. But now, I looked out the window, where sunlight was sparkling through the pine trees, and answered firmly, "I'm ready." Julian chuckled. "I knew you'd be the first person to come to mind. Congratulations, Elisa." When the call ended, I made myself a cup of tea, curled up in a knit blanket on the balcony, and let the breeze run gently through my hair. I had done it. I had pulled myself out of that cycle, the cycle where I was always the one giving and no one ever asked, "Are you okay?" No more late-night messages, no more desperate calls like, "It's just a loan, I'll pay you back by the end of the month." No more checking my bank account every morning in quiet panic. Now, every message I received was from people who truly cared. Coworkers, old friends, or a few new ones I'd met through yoga classes in Boulder. No one asked for money. They simply asked, "How are you feeling today?" or "Want to grab dinner tonight?" I hadn't just found freedom. I had found myself again. One afternoon, I went back to the coffee shop from years ago, sitting at the same table by the window. The shop owner still remembered me, faintly. "You've been here before, haven't you? Weren't you the one who asked about the jazz track I was playing that day?" I laughed. "That was me, and now I live here." He pointed outside the window. "This place heals a lot of people." I nodded. There was nothing more that needed to be said. That night, I wrote in my journal. I spent my youth guarding a door for a family that never wanted to come in to see me, only to take what was inside. Now, I've locked that door, and I'm keeping the key for myself. This new life wasn't loud. There were no cheers, but it was quiet, and to me, that was the most luxurious thing I had ever owned. Didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Amanda might call one day, her voice trembling. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going back. Not because I didn't love them, but because I'd learned to love myself first. One crisp fall morning, as I watered the plants on my balcony, my phone pinged with a new email. I didn't look right away, but a few minutes later, sipping my tea, I opened my inbox and paused at an unfamiliar name. Melanie Carter. It took me a few seconds to place her. Melanie was Amanda's cousin-in-law, someone I had only seen briefly at a couple family gatherings, a quiet girl who always stayed in the background and never spoke up. I hadn't even known she had my email. The subject line read, "Thank you, Alyssa." Curious, I opened it. "You probably don't remember me well. I'm Melanie, Aunt Grace's daughter. Amanda once asked me to babysit Haley one summer, and you drove me home after Haley's birthday party." I stayed silent for years, thinking I didn't have the right to speak up. But after learning what you did, how you stood up, how you drew a line, I couldn't not send this message. I sat frozen. Every word she wrote felt like a drop falling into the still pond inside me. I was stuck in a similar cycle. My family always said I was luckier, so I had to give more. I worked 3 jobs at once and still had to send money home for my mom, for my brother. And when I tried to say no, they called me ungrateful and selfish. But after hearing what you did, how you chose yourself, it felt like someone lit a path I didn't know existed. You helped me realize that saying no isn't cruel. It's self-protection. It's preserving the most precious thing, yourself. I sat there quietly, hands wrapped around a now cold cup of tea. Outside, the wind rustled golden maple leaves, sending a few tumbling gently to the ground. But inside me, something had quietly begun to bloom. It wasn't pride. It wasn't vindication. It was the feeling of being seen, of being understood. Melanie wasn't the first person to say something like this. A few weeks earlier, an old college friend had texted me, after reading a few lines I shared on my personal blog. "I used to think you were just really strong, like you didn't need anyone. But now I get it. You were so strong that everyone assumed you'd be fine, no matter what." I had read that line over and over again. Because for years, I never asked to be heard. I stayed quiet, held it all in, but no one had ever taught me that kindness doesn't mean letting people cross your boundaries. That night, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and typed a reply to Melanie. I never imagined what I did would inspire someone like that. "Thank you for having the courage to share. I know that's not easy. But I want you to remember, you're not alone. You're not selfish. You're just learning to love yourself the right way. And there's nothing wrong with that." I hit send, and in that moment, something became crystal clear. I used to think I had lost my family, but the truth was, I was redefining it. From people who love without conditions, who give without expectation, and who respect others as full human beings. The next morning, when I pulled back the curtains, sunlight poured into the room like a gentle blessing. I took a deep breath, feeling nothing heavy on my chest anymore. I was no longer the old Alyssa, the girl who always stepped aside, who always stayed quiet for fear of upsetting others. Now, I was Alyssa who knew how to say enough, who knew when to walk away when someone didn't value her. And the most beautiful part? I wasn't alone. Because out there, somewhere, people like Melanie were finding the courage to step out of the shadows. And if my journey could light even a small part of their path, then every bit of pain I had endured was worth it. On Sunday afternoon, I strolled down the cobblestone path that led to the nearby park, where the maple trees were changing leaf by leaf, from green to gold to fiery red. A little girl rode her bike, hair flying in the wind, while her mother ran behind her, laughing and calling, "Slow down, sweetheart." I paused for a moment, holding a paper cup of coffee, watching them like a scene from a living painting. That image stirred something in me, something I had lost in recent years, a sense of lightness. I used to think I had to do everything to make my family proud. I worked tirelessly, saved every penny, gave up vacations, small dreams, just to earn a good daughter label or a nod of approval from my mother. But they never stopped to ask, was I tired? Did I need someone to listen? They just needed me to be strong. And when I stopped, when I stood up and said no, they called me ungrateful. I used to fear that. I feared being seen as selfish, feared losing the blood ties I fought so hard to preserve. But now that the dust had settled, now that the midnight calls and circular blame had gone quiet, I realized something so simple. It hurt. I didn't lose my family. I had just found myself. And that person, the Alyssa I am today, no longer lives to please anyone but herself. I started doing the little things I once put off. I learned how to cook risotto, my favorite dish that I never had time for. I bought a bright red dress, the kind I used to think was too much for the office. I signed up for a Saturday pottery class, just because the feeling of clay in my hands made me feel alive. I reorganized my apartment, hung a giant abstract painting in the living room, not because it matched. One day, I received a postcard from Kelly, a former coworker who had moved to Italy. On the back, in neat handwriting, it read, "You showed me what it means to set boundaries without guilt. Because of you, I finally had the courage to move to Rome. Something I dreamed of since I was 20 but never dared to do. Thank you, Alyssa." I placed the postcard on my desk, among the small things that carried big meaning. A stone I picked up on my first hike in Colorado, a jar of dried flowers, and the leather journal I was still writing in. They were all tiny pieces of me. An Alyssa who no longer lived to prove anything to anyone. I no longer hoped for my family to understand. I didn't wait for an apology call from Amanda or a surprise message from my mom. Maybe one day they'd look back and understand, or maybe not. And either way, that's okay. I used to think love meant holding on tightly. Now I know sometimes love means letting go. Letting yourself and others be accountable for their own choices. When you stop trying to be so kind that you erase your own limits, you'll realize the people who truly value you will never ask you to burn out for them. I still remember a quote from some writer, "You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." And when I stopped burning for their expectations, I realized the warmest light doesn't come from sacrifice. It comes from the peace of living true to who you are. On that leaf-strewn path, I walked slowly. No rush, no escape, no. Alyssa's story is a powerful reminder that you are not obligated to sacrifice yourself just to preserve a relationship labeled family when it lacks respect. When you set boundaries and choose yourself, you're not being selfish. You're living truthfully. Not everyone will understand that, but the peace you find will be worth it. Because sometimes, walking away from family isn't a loss. It's the first step toward reclaiming your true self and your real worth. What do you think about Elisa's choice? Was she right to put herself before family obligations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, real-life stories. I started preparing for my baby shower at the beginning of April, when I was already huge at 33 weeks pregnant. My little house in the suburbs of Portland, once quiet, was now filled with cardboard boxes, pastel balloons, and cloud-themed invitations. I didn't hire a planner, no one offered to help. I handled everything myself. Every dish, every ribbon, every soft track I picked to play as the guests arrived. I ordered a vanilla cake with lavender buttercream from my favorite bakery. Even though I didn't have much of a budget, I still wanted everything to feel right. I chose a light mousse filling, thinking it would be easier for everyone to eat, especially my grandma, who always complained that sweets hurt her teeth. I went grocery shopping early Saturday morning, even though my back ached and my ankles had started to swell. I carried the bags home, arranged everything on the kitchen counter, then sat down and caught my breath in silence. No one asked if I needed anything. My mom said she was working overtime at the school library, and my brother Caleb was getting in the right headspace for his high school spring formal. Still, I kept going. I tidied up the living room, wiped down every window frame, and cleared out all the leftover moving boxes from the corners. I washed the ivory tablecloths and carefully pressed each crease flat. Deep down, I had one small hope. A peaceful afternoon, a little warmth and a sense of being seen, not as someone who'd made a mistake and got pregnant, like Mom once said, but as someone about to become a mother, someone trying to do the right thing for the baby girl growing inside her. I made a playlist of soft acoustic songs. It took me nearly 2 hours to put it together. I wanted the atmosphere to be gentle, the kind where people could sit and talk, or listen to the quiet hum of a mom-to-be. I imagined my daughter growing up in that kind of calm. The night before the party, I stayed up until nearly midnight hanging tissue garlands around the doorframe, strand by strand, using craft store glue. No one held the ladder while I stretched to tie them up high. I just hoped I wouldn't slip. At that point, I still had hope. I believed that maybe, just this once, they would show up, really show up, for me. My mom used to say everything's going to be okay, and I held on to that the way I held the handrail each morning when I came down the stairs. I told myself maybe once they saw all I'd done, they'd smile, hug me, and tell me I did great. I didn't need big words or expensive gifts. I just needed them to see me as part of this family, not the shadow left behind every time it was Caleb's turn. That morning, I walked into the living room and looked around one last time before the guests arrived. The early spring light filtered through the curtains, casting a glow on the sign I'd cut and glued by hand. "Welcome, baby Emma." Beneath it was a small table with pastries, fruit, and a pot of chamomile tea I'd already brewed. I gently placed my hand on my belly, where my baby had just kicked hard, like she was excited too. I wasn't expecting a picture-perfect party out of a magazine. I just hoped that for a fleeting moment, I could be the main character in my own story. No one interrupting, no one stealing the spotlight. But I was wrong. People started arriving around 1 p.m. First came Aunt Margaret, carrying a small basket full of embroidered handkerchiefs and a few worn children's books she said she used to read to me. Then my college friend Jenny, 6 months pregnant, walked in with a warm smile and a silver-wrapped gift box. At first, everything was just as I'd hoped. Soft wishes, gentle laughter, genuine hugs. I thought, maybe this time it'll be different. I started to relax. I even laughed out loud when a 3-year-old, Laura's son, reached up and tapped a dangling balloon with wonder. The atmosphere was simple but caring, and I truly believed this was my day. Until my mother tapped her fork against a glass. A sharp ting cut through the room, and everyone fell silent. She stood there in a teal dress, wearing that familiar smile, the one she always had before announcing something big. My dad stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back like a seal of support. "Before we cut the cake," my mother said in an oddly sweet voice, "we have some exciting news to share." I froze. My heart started pounding, like my body already knew what was coming. The kitchen door swung open and Caleb walked out, holding up a bright red envelope. "I got into Princeton!" he shouted, his face glowing. The room erupted. Someone clapped. Aunt Margaret gasped, "Oh my goodness, how wonderful!" One of my mom's friends even got up and hugged Caleb like she'd raised him herself. I looked around. No one was looking at me anymore. Or at the lavender cake. They all surrounded Caleb, my 17-year-old brother who had never done the dishes or made his bed, and whose tutoring bills I'd paid for the past 2 years. The cake I ordered, with "Welcome Sweet Emma" written on top, was pushed aside to make room for the pizza someone had just ordered. Someone turned on music. Loud, bouncy hip-hop, Caleb's favorite, completely drowning out the soft acoustic guitar I'd picked the night before. The laughter got louder, the room filled with stomping feet, clinking glasses, and the sound of Caleb's friends barging in, none of whom I'd ever met. One guy in a backwards baseball cap shouted, "Party's on, bro!" and fired up a Bluetooth speaker, bass shaking the walls like it was a graduation bash. I stood there, still holding my lukewarm chamomile tea, the mom-to-be sash slipping off my shoulder. No one turned to ask how I felt. No one mentioned the baby. The gifts were shoved into a corner. The Emma banner hidden behind a hand-drawn sign. Congrats, Caleb, Princeton. A bottle of soda, carelessly opened, spilled across the table, running dangerously close to the cake. I grabbed some napkins and bent down to clean it. My knees throbbed from kneeling, my belly pressing against my cotton dress. As I wiped up the sticky frosting smears on the hardwood floor, a blonde girl brushed past me like I was an old decoration. She didn't say excuse me. I heard Caleb's booming voice from behind, talking about campus tours and dream dorms. I kept cleaning. No one stopped. No one saw me. Everything revolved around one person, just like always. I was used to that. But this time was different. I forced myself to stand, back aching, hands sticky with frosting and soda. I looked around the crowded room, full of people who weren't really there for me. My mother was telling a dramatic story about how she'd sacrificed so much to help Caleb reach his Ivy League dream. My father nodded, like he'd personally raised a genius. No one mentioned the person about to give birth. No one noticed me walking out of the noise, clutching my belly. I went into the kitchen, washed my hands, then quietly climbed the stairs. The music kept thumping downstairs, the cheers drifting up like echoes from another world. But in my head, one thought remained. This time, they crossed the line, and I wasn't going to let it slide like I had before. I sat on the bed, legs stretched out, back propped against a pile of pillows, hands cradling my belly like a silent shield. The laughter rising from the living room felt like dull blades scraping against my chest. Downstairs, the party for Caleb's Princeton acceptance was in full swing. In the house I bought, with money earned from sleepless nights, packing orders, handling returns, and making it through low-sale months, they celebrated a success that wasn't mine. And honestly, it never was, at least not to them. I slowly closed my eyes, trying not to cry. But the memories didn't need permission to return. I remembered being 11 and my favorite purple princess dress being shredded by school scissors. Caleb was 9 then. When asked, he just shrugged and said, "I didn't take care of it." My mother waved it off, told me not to be dramatic. It was just a piece of fabric and I needed to learn to let things go. Caleb got taken out for ice cream right after. "To forget the fuss," she said. When I was in 8th grade, I was selected to attend a gifted science program at the local university. I brought the invitation home, excited to show my dad. He skimmed it, then asked one question. "Does it cost money?" I nodded. He shook his head and told me to focus on more practical things. 2 years later, when Caleb got accepted into a robotics summer camp, my dad didn't hesitate. He pulled out a check right away. "It's an investment in the future," he said. I lost count of how many times I did chores alone while Caleb played video games all afternoon. I used to think if I worked hard enough, I'd be recognized, but no. When I cleaned the whole house, my mom said, "That's what girls are supposed to do." When Caleb remembered to water the plants once, she praised him for being thoughtful about nature. Then, when I was 19, I decided not to go to college. Not because I didn't want to, but because no one supported me. I once mentioned studying graphic design, but my mom shook her head. "Drawing won't feed anyone," she said. "You should get a stable job." So I applied at a print shop and spent my evenings building an online store selling handmade decor. I did everything myself, learned product photography, SEO, customer service. No one asked if I was tired. When the store started bringing in steady income, I saved enough to put a down payment on this little house, the one I live in now. The one they moved into without asking after I gave them a tour to show off what I'd accomplished. I remember my mom's face so clearly. First surprise, then tears, then a soft whisper. "So the whole family finally has a home." No one asked if I wanted to share. They just brought their things in, rearranged the furniture, and called it our house. Caleb, then a 10th grader, already had a brand new MacBook my parents bought him. I was still using an old laptop I salvaged from a repair shop. I once paid to fix Caleb's car after he dented the back door on the way to tutoring because my mom said, He's still young. It was just an accident. I still remember going to my first trimester ultrasound alone, driving nearly an hour to the clinic. When I told my mom I was pregnant, she was silent for a moment and then asked, "Does the baby's father know?" No congratulations. No hug. That night, they brought it up at dinner. Caleb laughed and said, "Wow, guess I'm gonna have to share the Wi-Fi with a baby now." Every time I think about these things, I ask myself why I kept giving. Maybe I hoped they'd notice, that they'd change, that they'd love me the way I kept trying to love them, despite everything. But there's one thing I don't hope for anymore. I bent down, opened my nightstand drawer, and took out a gray folder. Inside were the house deed, utility bills in my name, and a file I'd been quietly preparing for weeks. Bold, clear words. Undeniable. I ran my fingers over the first page, feeling like I was touching something sacred. Proof that I hadn't imagined the unfairness. I didn't want to cry anymore. I just wanted to reclaim my space. The next morning, just as the sun began to rise, I was already up. The house still carried the sticky smell of spilled soda and melted frosting from yesterday's party. I stood in the kitchen, holding a warm cup of peppermint tea, feeling nothing but stillness. In the breeze coming through the window, I could hear Caleb's steady snoring from his room and the creaking of the wooden chair in the living room, where my dad usually sat each morning with his lukewarm coffee. I wasn't hesitating anymore. I pulled 3 white envelopes from the kitchen drawer. Each one was sealed, labeled clearly Diana, my mom, Mark, my dad, and Caleb. Inside was a copy of a 30-day notice to vacate the premises, along with a property deed showing I was the sole legal owner. I placed them neatly on the dining table, the same one where they always left dirty dishes for me to clean. Among the leftover mess from the party, the 3 white envelopes stood out like slashes across velvet. I didn't wait long. At exactly 7:15, my mom walked into the kitchen, her hair still messy, holding a mug of soy milk. She yawned, her eyes scanning the table, then stopping. "What's this?" she said, still groggy, but I heard the edge in her voice. She picked up an envelope and tore it open right there. After just a few lines, her eyes widened. Her mug tilted slightly, almost spilling. "Olsen," she called out, louder now. "This has to be some kind of joke, right?" I stepped into the room from the hallway, calm and steady. "It's not," I said. "I've already sent the official letter. These are just copies for the family." She looked at me like I'd just announced I was selling the house to strangers. "Move out? How could you write something like this? This is our home." "No, Mom," I said, looking her in the eye. "This is my home. I bought it. I pay the mortgage. I cover the utilities, the internet, even the plumbing repair you called an outrageous couple hundred a few weeks ago. It's all me." My dad came in from the living room, still groggy but frowning now as he looked at the papers on the table. He grabbed one, skimmed it, then turned to me. "What kind of stunt is this? You're pregnant, and now you want to cause stress in the house?" "It's because I'm pregnant that I can't keep living like this," I said, placing a hand on my belly. "I don't want my daughter growing up in a house where her mother is ignored and walked over every day." Caleb finally wandered in, hair a mess, headphones still around his neck. He looked around and asked sleepily, "What's going on? Why is it so loud?" "She's kicking us out of the house," my mom hissed, her voice sharp like metal scraping glass. Caleb looked at me like I was some villain in a movie. "Are you serious? Just because I got into Princeton yesterday? That was no big deal." I let out a dry laugh. "It's not just because of yesterday. It's because of every day before that. Every time you got favored and I was told, 'You're the girl, you should be more understanding.' Every time I achieved something and Mom said, 'Don't brag too much.' When I got pregnant, everyone acted like nothing happened. But when you got that acceptance letter, the whole world stopped spinning for you." My dad tried to smooth things over. "Come on, Allison, everyone says things they don't mean. Don't blow this out of..." "You're calling the years I spent being treated like a maid blowing things out of proportion?" I cut him off. "I paid for this roof, but Mom told the neighbors the whole family built this together. Caleb wrecked his car, I paid to fix it, and Mom scolded me for bringing it up too much. No one ever asked if I needed help, if I was tired, if I was okay. And then when I threw a party for myself, the whole family turned it into someone else's stage. No one said anything for a long time. No one could argue. I looked at my mom, now trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. I'm not doing this out of hate. I'm doing it out of love, for myself, and because I refuse to let Emma grow up in a family where everything comes at the cost of silence and self-sacrifice. Caleb took a step back. So where are we supposed to sleep? At a hotel or something? I've planned it, I said. I have a list of short-term rentals, movers if needed. One of my friends even offered to help pack. You have 30 days. My mom stared at me like she had no idea who I was. Maybe she never really did. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving behind stunned faces. Each step I took was a reminder of something they couldn't undo. This time, I wasn't backing down. This time, I chose myself. In the days that followed, the house felt like water stretched tight before a storm. No one said anything direct, but every slam door, every side glance, every heavy step in the hallway sent the same message. They weren't leaving without a fight. My mom started her emotional campaign the way she always did. She called Aunt Hannah, the only relative in Arizona I still talked to, and tearfully told her I was kicking my parents out while pregnant. A day later, I got a long message from Aunt Hannah. Sweetheart, no matter how upset you are, don't let your daughter grow up without her grandparents. Family is forever. Alice's eyes were truly red. My dad took a different route. He suddenly started doing chores, things he hadn't done in all 24 years I lived with him. He wiped counters, took out the trash, even tried chatting with me in the mornings. Did you sleep okay? But I knew exactly what that was. Not guilt. Strategy. A way to soften me, to pull me back into the dutiful daughter role they had always assigned me. Caleb didn't bother hiding his hostility. He started blasting music in his room, slamming doors every time he walked past me, and didn't hold back with snide remarks at dinner. One night, as I was arranging flowers on the table, he walked by and muttered, "Not sure how you plan to raise a kid when no one's around to help wash the dishes." I didn't respond. I just quietly tucked another sprig of lavender into the vase. Then things went beyond what any family should tolerate. One Tuesday morning, I received an email from a major supplier, someone I was negotiating with for a potential partnership next quarter. They said they'd heard some things from a relative about me showing signs of emotional instability and possibly being unfit to manage operations after giving birth. I sat frozen in my office, staring at the flickering screen, then exhaled slowly. I knew exactly who was behind it. I printed the email and filed it into the gray folder, the one where I kept all legal documents. I'd hired a lawyer the week before. She was a friend of an old friend, well-versed in legal eviction processes in Oregon, and not swayed by pleas like, "But they're your biological parents." But I didn't get angry. I didn't call to confront anyone. I just forwarded the scanned email to my attorney, along with the records I'd been collecting. Utility bills, home repair receipts, the mortgage agreement, even photos of the house when I moved in. Completely empty before they arrived. On day 17, my mom started crying loudly every evening. She didn't talk to me directly, just made dramatic laments in the living room about sleepless nights worrying about Allison, about thankless sacrifices, and the nights she stayed up when I was sick as a child. I walked past, noise-canceling headphones on, and kept updating the baby registry on my laptop. On day 21, Caleb tried playing the responsibility card. He sat across from me in the kitchen, for the first time since getting the notice. "If you kick us out, I'll have nowhere to study," he said, voice trembling. "I could lose my scholarship. I might not even get to go to Princeton." I looked at him, not angry, not sympathetic. I know how that feels. I didn't have anyone supporting me when I wanted to go to college either. And you know what? I still made it. On day 24, they stopped talking altogether. No more crying, no more guilt tripping, just a heavy silence, thick like fog. The kind that doesn't lead to reconciliation, only quiet preparation for the inevitable. I kept everything going as usual: work, rest, prenatal checkups. My best friend Clarissa came over a few times to help set up the baby's room. We played soft music, chatted about baby names, and picked out a few wall decorations. I tried to build a small world for my daughter, one where no one could take away my role as her mother. Day 30 arrived on a calm, sunny morning. I woke up early, not out of worry, but because my body had grown used to the peace of not being interrupted. They packed in silence. My mom walked the hallway with a stiff expression. My dad said nothing as he dragged suitcases down the stairs. Caleb, the last to leave, stood in the doorway with his backpack slung over one shoulder, staring at me. "You'll regret this," he said, voice dry. "No one's gonna stand by you forever." I just nodded. And I don't need anyone standing beside me to be myself. The door closed behind them, and for the first time in years, the house felt bigger, brighter. Not just because the furniture was gone, but because the heaviness had left with them. It's been over a year since that door shut behind them, and my little house has finally learned how to breathe again. Every morning I make coffee in a kitchen that's no longer cluttered with dirty mugs or misplaced dish rags. Every night I rock Emma to sleep in a room glowing with soft light, her name hand-stitched and hanging on the wall, not hidden behind a "Congrats Caleb" banner or anyone else's shadow. Emma is a calm but fierce little girl, with my eyes and the same dimpled cheeks my dad used to have. Every time I look at her, I know I made the right choice. Not because of what I avoided, but because of what I've built. A real home. My business is steady. After giving birth, I took a month off and returned gradually, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I've hired a delivery assistant and a part-time order manager. My small online shop is now listed among the city's trusted local businesses. I'm not chasing flashiness, but it's enough to keep me from worrying about bills anymore. As for my old family, news still trickles in the way it always has, through distant relatives who don't really care about me but love to gossip. I heard Caleb dropped out after his first semester at Princeton, not because of grades, but because he couldn't handle living on his own. He wasn't used to cooking, doing laundry, managing his own schedule, or handling anything I used to silently take care of. While his classmates were applying for internships, Caleb was still struggling to build a timetable that didn't have overlapping classes. I didn't feel vindicated, but I wasn't surprised either. After leaving my house, my parents moved in with my uncle in Salem. According to a cousin on my dad's side, they were given a small room and asked to get back on their feet. But within 6 months, tension erupted. My mom complained that the kitchen wasn't clean enough, while my dad refused to chip in for the electric bill, citing financial hardship. In the end, my uncle, once incredibly generous, asked them to leave. Since then, they've bounced around, sometimes in cheap motels, sometimes crashing with acquaintances, but nowhere lasted long. They never contacted me again, and I didn't try to reconnect either. Sometimes I still think about them, not with bitterness, but as a clear reminder, not every blood tie comes with real love. I gave them countless chances. I kept quiet, kept giving, sacrificed even the smallest things, hoping to be seen, to be acknowledged. But that recognition never came. Only growing entitlement and ingratitude. I don't regret letting them go. In fact, it was the first time I chose myself without asking for permission. One early autumn afternoon, with the leaves turning on the trees out front, I pushed Emma's stroller to the park near our neighborhood. She loved the rustling leaves, watching squirrels dart past, and would giggle every time I whistled at the sparrows. People say time heals all wounds. I don't fully believe that. What healed me wasn't time, it was action. It was standing up, clearing out the toxic space around me, and saying enough, even when my voice shook. Emma is growing up in a kind of gentleness I never had. She'll learn that love doesn't come from silence or submission, that a woman doesn't need to carry an entire family to be worthy of affection, and that sometimes strength doesn't mean powering through. It means knowing when to let go. One day, while putting away her toys, I opened an old storage box and found a few baby shower cards from last year. Some messy handwriting, a few generic wishes, and a handful of gifts I couldn't even remember who gave. I thought about throwing them away, but instead I placed them back in the box. Not because I missed them, but because I wanted to remember that I had once hit rock bottom and climbed out on my own. No one lifted me. I walked, one step at a time. From Allison's story, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing isn't forgiveness, it's letting go. Not every relationship is worth keeping, even when it's bound by blood. When you choose yourself, you're not being selfish, you're saving your own life. Allison didn't just reclaim her home, she reclaimed her worth. She proved that peace doesn't come from enduring in silence, but from setting clear boundaries and believing in yourself. What do you think about Allison's decision? Did she do the right thing by setting boundaries with her own family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget